皆さんおはようございます。村田です。今日のトピックはコストダウンの話です。So today, I want to talk about one strategy for reducing costs in your applications. It's called no RCE strategy. What no RCE strategy is basically avoiding RCEs. Don't file the RCEs and you can cut your costs. There are three main points I'm going to discuss today about this general strategy. Point one is a preliminary amendment. This is an amendment before the first office action. Point two, interview the examiner. And point three, amend after the interview. These are the three general points for today. There are many other ways to avoid RCEs or to cut costs, but I'm going to focus just on these 3 points for today. So, RCE costs. A first RCE with the exchange rate as of yesterday is about 14万円. 14万5千円. And then if you file a second RCE in the case, the cost goes up. It goes up to 21万2千円. Okay? So there's a kind of a significant increase there. And these fees actually were recently increased by the USPTO, and I expect these fees to increase in the future. So if you file both of these RCEs, the cost for the two RCEs is more than 35万円. It's pretty expensive, right? It's more than a translation cost for an application. And if you can file no RCE, if you avoid entirely, it's 0 yen. You don't pay anything. So I think you can see that if we can avoid a first RCE or a second or both, we can significantly reduce the cost in our applications. So let's imagine your company has 500 applications that have 2 RCEs filed. The cost for that will be 1億8000万円. So you can see that just filing 2 RCEs in 500 of your applications can be very expensive. And this is an avoidable cost. So, point one, preliminary amendment. This is basically step one of this process. Okay? We amend before the first office action. So generally, a first office action comes within 18 months of your filing of your application. It depends, but if you're filing directly in the United States, it's around 18 months. It's about the time, a little bit after publication usually. Sometimes it's sooner. And in your preliminary amendment, you should include narrow claims. You should add narrow claims, or if you already have 20 claims, make some of those claims more narrow. And the goal is we're trying to get some allowable claim. So if the claim feels a little bit too narrow, I don't like it. Many times people tell me that this claim is too narrow. That's okay. Just get something allowed. And later we can try to discuss with the examiner and broaden that claim to a claim that we like. And make sure you have 20 total claims. When you pay your filing fee for your application is always the same. You're paying for those 20 claims. So if you're filing an application with 5 claims, but you're paying for 20, so you're kind of wasting the money for 15 claims. It's kind of like a mottainai. So, after the preliminary amendment, we will get a first office action, and then we'll do the interview. So the interview is after the first office action. So it's preliminary amendment, non-final office action, then we interview the examiner. Hopefully, at this stage, we have at least one allowed claim. Hopefully, that's the goal, to have something allowed right away. And then if we have some claims allowed, or even one claim allowed, we discuss with the examiner, we propose to broaden that claim. So if the examiner allows the claim, the examiner did the good prior art search. And now, if we discuss maybe removing some features from the allowed claim, the examiner can give us good feedback because the examiner is familiar with the prior art. So we can propose broadening the claims, and maybe the examiner can say, yes, I will allow this claim during the interview. If no claims are allowed, propose some narrowing amendments, propose some narrower claims to the examiner, and maybe the examiner will allow something during the interview. So, after the interview, we're going to do an amendment, okay? And the amendment is basically the response to the non-final office action, the first office action. So we amend after the interview. We should amend based on the interview result. If you do something different, the examiner, it's hard to predict what will the examiner do. So try to amend based on the result of that interview. And allowable claims should be possible at this stage. They should be possible at this stage. If you're having problems and you're going to a final office action and nothing is allowable, then go back, look at your preliminary amendment. It's not narrow enough. Your claims are not narrow enough. Maybe you felt, oh, these are too narrow, but if they're not allowed, they're not narrow enough. They're still reading on the prior art, assuming the examiner's rejection is correct. So that's what you have to do. So if nothing is allowed, you in your next case, or that you have, go back to the preliminary amendment and make the claims even more narrow. So at this stage, allowable claims should be possible. If no claims are allowed, add some narrow claims to your amendment and make them very narrow. Usually in a Japanese application, I recommend to look at the specific embodiments and describe in some detail, describe your figure, because sometimes the description is not so detailed. And usually in the Japanese applications, the description will say, as shown in figure 2, you can see the smartphone interface or the buttons or so on. And there's no description of the figure. It just, the description only says, look at the figure. So I would recommend to try to describe the picture details of the figure in your claims to make some more narrow claims. So those are the 3 points. And this is a very general strategy, but it works. There are many other ways to cut costs, to avoid RCEs and those kind of things. And I'll cover some of those in other videos in the future. But for now, I want to focus just on these 3 points. So the goal, we want an allowable, maybe narrow claim ASAP. And then talk to the examiner regarding broadening those allowable claims, if possible. That's during the interview. And then, even if you have a final office action, if you get something allowed, you can still amend after the final office action to put the allowable subject matter into all of your claims, and you can get an allowance without an RCE. So, at the very least, you want to get your first allowable claim after the final office action. But we're trying to get an allowable claim after the non-final. Okay? I hope that this could be helpful for you today, and thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe for future videos. ありがとうございました。